Hello everyone, I'm Jessica Kramer for MRC-TV. Today we are joined by Hans von Spakovsky, an election expert at the Heritage Foundation, to discuss the current state of election 2020. Hello Hans, thanks for joining.
Sure, thanks for having me.
All right, so I think a lot of people are really unwell right now with everything that's going on. Can you explain these legal challenges that the Trump campaign has put forth in several states?
Sure. They have filed lawsuits, for example, in Michigan and Pennsylvania over the fact that their poll observers, their poll watchers, were barred from watching the vote counting in Detroit and Philadelphia. That's a violation of state law. State law in both states allows candidates to have poll watchers there. It's a very important law because it's the transparency of our elections that is key to this. In Pennsylvania, they're also filing suit over the fact that the state Supreme Court there overrode the state statute that sets the the deadline for absentee ballots to come in, and in fact extended the deadline past Election Day, and then also told election officials they couldn't reject a ballot for the signature on the ballot not matching the signature of the voter on file, which is an indication of possible fraud. And they also told them they couldn't reject a ballot even if there was no postmark on the envelope indicating that it had been voted by the end of Election Day, which is one of the requirements. So they're suing over that. They've also got a suit just filed in Nevada. They say that there are non-residents who have cast ballots in that election. And they also filed suit in Georgia, for example, claiming that one of their poll watchers observed election officials in one of the counties processing and counting absentee ballots that had come in after the deadline. In Georgia, you have to have your absentee ballot in the hands of election officials by the end of Election Day, 7 p.m. And this guy, this witness says, well, no, they were getting ballots at like 3 o'clock in the morning and counting them.
Yeah, and I've been watching the news, and it seems like the media is telling us there's no evidence of this wrongdoing, but obviously it seems like there is. What do you make of all of it? Do you think any of this is going to be substantial enough for Trump to make a case?
Well, the problem that the Trump campaign has, and this is not unique to them, but to all candidates, is twofold. One, the amount of time that you have after an election result is determined is very short. The time you have to investigate and gather evidence, it is extremely time-consuming, takes a lot of resources, because what you have to do is, look, you have to gather enough evidence about enough votes that were either wrongly cast or misconduct or other problems that raise doubts about the outcome of the election. That's difficult to do in a very short time. The other big problem that they have is that even if you have substantial evidence that the election was compromised, judges and courts are extremely reluctant to overturn elections. So I have to say, no matter what the merits are of the cases, they've got really an uphill battle to convince the courts that the election results in any particular state should be overturned.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what are your expectations as courts start ruling on these challenges? If it's not going to change the election one way or another, do you think at least there'll be higher punishment for these fraud cases?
Unfortunately, I'm afraid that's not going to happen. You know, a lot of elections, look, I could tell you about all kinds of cases of potential election fraud that have occurred that election officials refuse to do anything about, and that law enforcement officials refuse to investigate and prosecute. And I'm afraid that may be the same thing that occurs in this case. I mean, for example, the Trump administration in Philadelphia, once they were locked out of being able to observe the counting of the ballots, they went to a state court and got an order from the judge ordering Philadelphia election officials to let their observers in, and Philadelphia election officials refused to abide by the order, and the local sheriff refused to enforce it. So will those election officials be punished for defying both a court order and state law? I'm willing to bet that Philadelphia just drops the whole thing when the election's over.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you also think that this is going to go all the way to the Supreme Court? I know Trump has said that he's planning on that, but do you actually see this happening in that direction?
I don't know if the case is in the other states that'll happen. I mean, the one case that might get there is the Pennsylvania case. There, the Trump administration has a pretty good claim that what the state Supreme Court did was unconstitutional because while the state legislatures are given the constitutional authority to set the rules for elections, it's the legislatures that do that, not other government officials. So they got a pretty good claim there. But look, if Trump loses in the other states and the results in Pennsylvania, the eventual outcome isn't going to make a difference in the election, they may not pursue it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and last question. I know a lot of people were expecting that we wouldn't find out who the president would be on Tuesday. Is this as bad as some people were anticipating? Did you anticipate this?
Well, I actually feared it would be even worse, that it would take even longer to count all of these absentee ballots. But still, as you know, we're now at the end of the week of election day, and the last time something like this happened was 20 years ago, as you know, in the Bush v. Gore decision. And I don't think the American public likes or understands why it's taken so long to determine the outcome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wish that every state would take after Florida and just learn how to count these.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Agree.
Thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.